but they have a devoted and dedicated community of listeners or readers or people on their email list that love them and will sign up for the summit because they recommended them to, and will buy that all access pass because they're promoting it. Those are the kinds of people that you want to be on your summit. And there's absolutely no shortage of mid-level influencers out there in any niche.
Get ready to build, protect, and sell your expertise online with the Online Genius Podcast. You'll laugh. We hope you won't cry, but you'll always be informed and prepared so you can have the success you want. Here's your host, Bobby Klink.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Online Genius Podcast. I am your host, Bobby Klink. I'm excited about today's show because we're going to be talking about a couple of subjects that really get me excited to talk about. One of them is infopreneurship, and the other one is virtual summits. Now, if you don't know what one or both of those terms mean, don't worry. I've got a guest who's here today who's going to help you to understand exactly what each one of those terms mean and to get a good start on moving forward with building your business. Today's guest expert is Bailey Richert. Bailey is a business coach for beginner and budding infopreneurs. In 2013, Bailey left her corporate career, studied entrepreneurship at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and launched her online business with the goal of owning her own income from anywhere in the world. Today, she helps others realize that it's possible to achieve the life they truly desire if they put the effort in to create the financial means to support that life. Through her books, blog, courses, and coaching programs, Bailey helps individuals launch profitable online businesses as infopreneurs. She helps people become respected experts in their field, creating value and generating income by sharing their life experience, knowledge, and passions with others. Welcome to the Online Genius Podcast, Bailey.
Thank you for having me.
So now, Bailey, before we get to your expertise, which I definitely want to get to quickly, I came across a tidbit on your website that I have to ask you about.
Sure.
You built a Stratocaster guitar. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes, I did.
Okay. And what in the world compelled you to build a guitar?
Okay, first of all, doesn't everybody want to have their own guitar or learn to play the guitar? It's just like instant cool factor. I've always been interested in that instrument. And I actually had an opportunity while I was studying entrepreneurship at MIT when I was a grad student there. They have a hobby shop, like a wood shop. We call it the hobby shop, but it's a wood shop. And I already had a little bit of experience in that sort of stuff, but I've never really tackled the idea of creating my own instrument. And so with the help and mentorship of some of the staff there, I was able to achieve this really awesome goal of building my own Strat. It was amazing.
Okay, but let me ask you, did you know how to play guitar before you started building it?
Acoustic, yes. Electric, not so much. And yes, of course, I mean, they're kind of the same thing in the sense that, you know, they both have 6 strings, but there are differences, obviously, with the electronics and, you know, all the knobs and buttons and things that I was not familiar with when I started.
Yeah, no, so I played in a band in college. I have a lot of friends who are still musicians. I actually have some friends who actually do build guitars, but you know, they are people who are actually in bands, in music, and also have wood shops. So it makes more sense. But given what you did, it seemed like a little bit of a departure. So I had to ask.
I'm a lifelong learner. I'm just always interested in doing new things and challenging myself and finding cool stuff that then I can talk to people about on podcasts that'll have them going, wow, this person's interesting.
Well, building a guitar, I think definitely qualifies. So, you know, so with that, I want to move on to the topic of infopreneurship. And you use that term of infopreneur, I think, to kind of describe your customer avatar, your client avatar. But, you know, how do you define that term?
Sure. An infopreneur is somebody who wants to become a business owner, usually somebody who wants to have a personal brand that they are monetizing through the creation and sale of info products and services, informational products and services. So we generally think of things like ebooks, online courses, coaching services, virtual summits, that sort of thing. But really it's about taking your life experience, knowledge, and passions, things that you've done in your life. It could be from your previous jobs. It could be from a hobby. It could be from an interest that you have, and turning those into revenue streams through these types of products and services.
And so my general understanding is kind of, I think of it as there's two sides to it. The first side is you have to kind of build a platform for yourself and establish yourself as someone with knowledge. Mm-hmm. And then the second side is figuring out how to make money from that. So is that a fair kind of breakdown of how you have to think about being an infopreneur?
That's definitely fair. I have a 6-step process for how you can launch an infopreneur business from scratch, which I teach my audience. And actually, step number 4 is building a platform. And step number 5 is creating your revenue streams.
Yeah, so I'm clearly missing a lot because I didn't even hit on the first 3. So why don't you walk through what the 6 steps are to building an infopreneur business?
Sure. So when you start all the way at the beginning, before you can even create a platform, you have to know who it is that you're targeting. Who is your ideal audience? So that very first step is going to be figuring out your niche. Then the next step after that is going to be working on your message. So what is it that you are trying to communicate to your audience? What are you trying to teach them? What do you stand for? After that, you have to build your brand. So that's partially visual, but it's also partially, how you wish to be represented throughout all of your different online platforms that then you'll build in step 4. And that includes your website, your social media profiles, your blog, your YouTube channel, podcast, things like that. It's only after that, after you have started to really develop a readership and a following and an audience around the things that you teach. And like you said, develop that kind of name for yourself and explain your expertise to the world, that then you can monetize with revenue streams, which is step 5. And then step number 6 is sales funnels, which is all about, okay, now you have this revenue stream. How are you going to consistently sell it in order to create a living off of this?
Okay. Well, I want to start at the first step there. And you said niche, I say niche, but is it fair to say, and I think I struggled with this early on when I was trying to make the transition from stuffy lawyer to online entrepreneur. And in my experience from talking to people since then, it seems like when you think that you have kind of niched down far enough, you probably have at least 2 or 3 more steps to go. Is that what you found generally too?
I think that's usually true. When I'm working with my VIP clients who come to me, they want to start an infopreneur business for themselves, and they sort of already have an idea of who their target audience is. Once we really start picking that apart, usually they realize that they needed to go just a little bit further.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started, I said, well, I'm an intellectual property lawyer who works with entrepreneurs, but the word entrepreneur is so broad, Sure. It really has no meaning. And so it took me multiple steps to get down. So I definitely see that as a difficult piece. Another thing, though, that I find interesting is your background. You're kind of like me, you don't come from a sales or marketing background. You come from a more traditional career.
That's true.
And what was your career before you started kind of building this business as an infopreneur?
Environmental engineer. I went to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, RPI, in Troy, New York, near Albany. And I was blessed to have received significant scholarship money to go there and pursued an education in environmental engineering. And that's the career that I worked in for multiple years before deciding to pivot and become a business owner.
Now, here's my question. Did you have any doubts about making that move? Because in a sense, I don't want to say, and I don't want to say wasted. People say the same thing to me if I were to, as I move more and more to offering educational products and courses and things like that, they're saying, oh, but you're not even using your education anymore. Did you get that from people?
Oh, absolutely. I got that from people because being an engineer is a societally prestigious profession. So for anyone to walk away from that, especially after having invested so many years into your education, people definitely, were looking at me like I was nuts. But most of the people that said those things to me didn't really know me and the situation that I was going through at the time. I'm very open about the fact that I was not in a good emotional, mental, or physical place around the time I made the decision to leave my job. I was very unhappy. I was going through my quarter life crisis. I was around 25 years old at the time. And my closest friends and family were very supportive because they knew that I was going to have to make changes in my life in order to really get to where I wanted to be. And I don't see my education at all as being wasted, even though I don't do environmental engineering anymore. And there's so many reasons why. Aside from the amazing experience that college is in general, I was able to study abroad 2 times when I was an undergrad. I met my best friend at school. I believe that so many of the things that I learned while I was at school, my education in professional development and all that sort of stuff, has aided me in my profession today. And I think that it's also helped me a lot because the story of my story, my background from moving from a professional career to becoming an infopreneur is very much what my clientele is experiencing. You know, they pursued an education in something that maybe wasn't 100% their passion, and now they want to work for themselves. And so it's something they can relate to. So I have zero regrets.
Yeah, well, and so I was going to ask you that. Are most infopreneurs, do they build from an existing career, or in your experience, are they usually making kind of a pivot and really changing what they do?
It's my experience they're really doing a pivot, and they are trying to get out of their 9 to 5 that they really don't enjoy. They're not feeling fulfilled. They have other passions and desires that they want to get out into the world, they want to use. And infopreneurship is the vehicle through which they decide to do that. And it's a really, really cool to actually hear some of the things that people used to do, but really what they want to do. It's amazing.
Well, so and also in your personal journey, I'm guessing you didn't go straight from kind of corporate career to teaching people to become infopreneurs. You first actually became an infopreneur. Is that?
That is correct. Yes. So the very first infopreneur business that I launched was in the travel industry. I wouldn't call myself a travel blogger. It wasn't quite like that. It was more like I was creating these travel info products, and my primary target audience was actually college students because, as I mentioned, I did study abroad twice, and I knew there was this gigantic need to teach people who had never been abroad before how to travel. So I did books and online courses and public speaking at my universities and others where I would teach people the basics of how to travel. And I pursued that business for multiple years before I actually pivoted into coaching. And the only reason that really came about was because I had so many people, friends, acquaintances, and then eventually some strangers too, saying, how did you publish that book? How are you making money with this online course? So I started offering my advice, and I started teaching people on the side. First, I was, of course, doing it for free. Then I created my first course. My very first online course in the coaching industry was about how to self-publish online my books. And then I decided at one point, I said, okay, I'm basically now, this is growing so quickly, trying to run 2 businesses at once, which if you've ever heard that phrase, if you try to chase 2 rabbits in a field, you'll catch neither. I had to make a decision. So I said, you know what, for a variety of reasons, I'm going to pivot full-time and I'm going to pursue my coaching business, which is what I do today.
Okay. And so how long were you kind of in the other business before you pivoted to coaching?
About 2 years.
Let me dig down on your process that you teach people. I think what stops a lot of people from making the jump is they feel overwhelmed because it seems like there's so many things they have to do. Mm-hmm. So for someone like that, I guess, what advice or suggestion would you have for someone to get over the sense of overwhelm?
I think one of the reasons that my clients and infopreneurs who are just getting started feel overwhelmed is that there is so much information out there today on the internet for you to absorb, a lot of it for free from people like me, coaches like me, people that really do want to be helpful. But at the same time, when you're on 20 different email lists of 20 different coaches, and this coach is currently talking about sales funnels, and that coach is currently talking about branding, and that coach is talking about something else, it feels like you're being pulled in 20 different directions. So my biggest piece of advice is, number one, focus in on just a couple of mentors. I'm talking just 1, 2, maybe 3 who you really resonate with and that you really enjoy reading their content, and focus on what they have to teach you at once, and really shut off and stop reading so much content from everyone, because you're just going to feel completely overwhelmed. And when you're choosing those couple of coaches or mentors to follow, find people like me, I guess, that have processes, that don't just say, well, here's a whole bunch of information, take what you will, but really that teach you, okay, here's the process, and that organize it for you in a more formal way. That's my advice.
So Bailey, when you were talking about that, I was immediately drawn, or my mind went to Russell Brunson, who I know you appreciate like I do, of ClickFunnels. He, in his marketing podcast recently, was talking about how there's a lot of people who go out there and they hire a coach and then they don't listen to the coach, or they
Yes.
do that. And I assume you deal with some of that, but I assume the next piece of advice you would have is, hey, pick one or two mentors and then do what they tell you to do.
Right, exactly. So that's one of the reasons why you need to focus, because if you're trying to implement the strategies that all of these 20 coaches that you might be listening to are telling you, you're just going to get overwhelmed. So pick a couple of those coaches to learn from and focus on, and then do what they say.
Okay, so I think that's wonderful advice, because I do think we have a lot of paralysis by overanalysis nowadays because of the information out there. But I guess let me ask you for a really bite-sized chunk of information for someone who is maybe just starting out or on the fence. If you could give them a piece of advice that's either something they could do in 5 minutes a day or something they could get done by the end of the week to start building their infopreneur business, what would it be?
I really think that most infopreneurs do benefit from having a lot of content which displays their expertise. And I would recommend that if you aren't already putting out content on a regular basis, that's something that you should be doing. And that's something that you can definitely get started by the end of the week. If you are looking for a place to start, blogging is definitely the first place, because that is ultimately going to be something that will last for a very long time. You're going to get, search engine optimization with Google, all that sort of stuff. So that's probably where, I would recommend starting if you don't have a platform, but creating content on a regular basis is absolutely critical.
Okay. I think that's great advice. That's definitely consistent with everything I've heard from everybody. So that's not one where I think you're going to hear a lot of different perspectives. But I want to transition now, because what really kind of drew me and made me want to have you on the show is one of the things you do a lot is help people understand and run virtual summits. Mm-hmm. What is a virtual summit?
A virtual summit is basically an online conference where a host who's organizing the event will invite many other experts and people within their own niche to come together to give free presentations or interviews on particular topics, all relevant to one target audience. And then those interviews are shared out in public online. It's why it's a virtual summit. You don't have to go to a conference space or something like that. And it's a way for that host to build relationships with other people in their niche. It's a way for those speakers to all demonstrate their expertise and to share knowledge with an audience that hopefully they want to convince to become customers and followers.
And you run a virtual summit for infopreneurs, is that right?
I do. I run the annual Infopreneur Summit.
Yeah, and you only have the best guests at that summit, right?
Well, I certainly try.
Well, I'll let the listeners in on something. I mean, part of the way that I met Bailey is that she invited me to appear on or at the summit that she's holding next year. And so, I'm excited about it. It's going to be the first summit I've ever been a part of. I guess my question is, are summits an advanced technique, or is it something that kind of an infopreneur could consider early on in building their business?
I get this question a lot. I have so many people who are interested in doing summits, but they call themselves beginners. They consider themselves new to their industry, and they are scared to do a summit because they think that it is an advanced technique. And the truth is, you can make it as complicated as you want, but the basics of a summit are meant for beginners. They are meant to help you grow your email list quickly, grow your audience quickly, help you forge those relationships quickly. You don't have to have this gigantic network of influencers and people that you can reach out to. There's plenty of speakers out there. That's never the problem. And what I always tell people who are thinking about doing a summit but are shy and hesitant to jump in, I say, well, do you want to spend a year doing all the slow growth techniques that, might grow your email list by a couple hundred people? Or do you really want to push the pedal to the metal over the next 3 or 4 months and launch a summit that can help you grow your email list by thousands and really, just help accelerate your business to the level that you want it to be, in quick time? When I kind of put it like that, they go, okay, well, maybe it's worth a try then.
So I think there's a couple of things I want to dig down on in that answer. One, you mentioned there's plenty of speakers out there. I think that is an issue that a lot of people would be worried about being scared or nervous and saying, well, how in the world am I going to get people to come and speak at my summit? Who am I? Mm-hmm. Is that a real obstacle or not?
It's not a real obstacle. That's all just in our heads. There are so many people out there that want to be featured on summits because summits are an incredible opportunity to spread your message to a new audience. And there's usually a lot of speaker perks involved, like getting to network with all the other speakers that are on the summit. Usually the host will give the speakers a free all access pass. So there's a lot of reasons that people want to be on summits, and therefore there's no shortage of speakers. But I think one of the reasons that people get nervous about that is actually more because they think that in order to have a successful summit, they need to have the top A-level influencers and celebrities in their own niche come be on their summit. And the truth is, you do not. This is a common misconception, and I have done so many summits, not just for myself, but also for my course students and my VIP clients. And I've seen this time and time again, that when you do have a top A-level celebrity, they often don't view themselves as a real partner in your event. They just kind of see it as an opportunity for them to get more exposure. And therefore, they're really not going to help you promote that event. They just see it as another one of the 20 interviews they had to do that day. So what you're looking for, what I call them, are mid-level influencers, which, by the way, I consider myself a mid-level influencer. So that's a totally fine place to be in your niche. But these are people that aren't necessarily, have a million people on their email list and these absolutely huge followings, but they have a devoted and dedicated community of listeners or readers or people on their email list that love them and will sign up for the summit because they recommended them to, and will buy that all access pass because they're promoting it. Those are the kinds of people that you want to be on your summit. And there's absolutely no shortage of mid-level influencers out there in any niche.
Okay, now, so you said some things in that answer that I want to unpack for people who aren't as familiar with a summit. You mentioned kind of the all access pass versus something else. So why don't you explain how a summit usually works for attendees?
Sure. Well, a summit is going to offer a free ticket registration, and that is how you collect the email addresses of people that are going to now be in your audience who want to come to the summit and want to watch. So the first step is that somebody will come to the summit landing page, the homepage of the summit on the web, and they will opt in with their email address. And that's how you grow your email list. And then what you'll do is you are going to pitch them an all access pass. Now, this is the core offer or the main product that we offer in order to make money on the summit. And an all access pass is simply a membership area that contains all of the video recordings from the summit. So just like a real conference, when you go and you watch a speaker, you only get to see them speak for like an hour and then it's over, right? Well, on a virtual summit, we usually leave those pre-recorded interviews with the speakers up for about 24 hours each, and then they come down permanently. So if somebody who's registered for the summit, but let's say they have to work that week and they don't have an opportunity to watch all the interviews, even though you're giving them 24 hours because life gets in the way, they can purchase this all access pass, and then they'll have lifetime access to this membership area where they can watch the content at their, on their schedule whenever they want. Of course, there are so many ways that you can beef up the volume of that all access pass as well, exclusive interviews and other things like that. And there's other products that you can certainly offer as a part of your virtual summit funnel too, but that's just the main way that we talk about earning revenue.
So in some ways, a virtual summit has the advantage of both being kind of a freebie lead magnet, but also a product that you're going to make some money off of. So you can kind of kill two birds with one stone.
That's correct.
Now, let me ask you this. I know that a lot of virtual summits, you also then have swag bags, or basically the speakers will offer some things that you get as part of the all access pass. Is that a normal part, or is that just it's in some virtual summits you do that and in some you don't?
Well, I don't think that there's a normal way to do it. I think that you have to think about what's going to work best for you and what's going to work best for your niche, what your audience expects. I've worked with some people, my VIP clients, who are in a variety of different niches, and in some of the more like I have it in the tech niche, for example. I have somebody who works in technology and we're doing a summit for him, and he's pricing his all access pass much higher than I would for my industry, because he says that if something's priced too low in his industry, people won't perceive it as having value. And that's his decision, because this is his niche, his industry, which he knows better than I do, because I don't operate in that industry. So I think that you really have to think about what it is that your attendees expect. What is it that your speakers are willing to give? Are they even willing to contribute things? Or or not. Obviously, you need their cooperation in order to do something like that. So there are techniques like the one that you're mentioning that can be employed to help you get more sales by increasing value or offering more, but there doesn't mean that there's one right way to do it.
And also, I think people who aren't familiar with it may wonder, do the speakers get paid, or why do they participate in a virtual summit?
Right. The speakers do not get paid. I definitely don't pay my speakers, and I don't recommend that you do either, partially because you're already going to be in the red when you start, if that's the case. But also, if you pay somebody to do it, they're not going to see themselves again as that partner. They're really not going to help you promote. They already got paid to do the work. What you are interested in doing is building up genuine relationships with people in business that you can ultimately leverage even after the summit is over. I mean, take this podcast, for example. You're going to be on my summit. I'm on your podcast. This is the kind of stuff that you want to create with your speakers. And that's not going to happen if there's a financial transaction involved. So what I do is I just incentivize my speakers as much as possible in a non-monetary way. So giving them the free all access pass. I also create a PDF of summit notes, just some of the key takeaways and points. And that's a revenue stream that we do sell to attendees, but I give that for free to each one of the speakers as well. I have a separate speaker Facebook group for all the speakers to join so that they can network with one another. And I encourage and foster those relationships. I let my speakers share a freebie or lead magnet on their interview so that if someone who was listening to their interview on the summit wanted to opt in for the speakers list, then they could grow their email list as well. And then the one thing I do offer from a financial perspective is an affiliate commission. So we do want to incentivize and encourage our speakers to share the event. So we give them affiliate links to share. And if they do end up making referral sales through that affiliate link, then they do earn a commission on those sales, but we don't pay them outright.
So basically, a speaker's only going to make money if they direct someone to the summit, who then ultimately buys the all access pass or something else that you're selling.
That's correct.
Now, here's the thing. We've been talking about this, and I've at least attended some virtual summits and listened to some people talk about virtual summits before, and my mind is still swimming. So if a listener wanted or was thinking about, that they might want to run a virtual summit, what's kind of the first step? What should they be doing to try to learn and figure out if this is a good fit for them?
Well, when it comes to hosting your very first virtual summit, I have this 90-day, 12-step process for how it can be done. And it basically follows a very simple linear order. And the very first step out of all of this is you have to figure out your virtual summit logistics. So you need to take a look at your calendar and say, okay, do I have 90 to 120 days, 3 to 4 months to really put into this project? Do I have the time to dedicate to recording all of these interviews? Am I willing to make the kind of investment that I really need in the technology in order to host this event? Those are some questions that you can easily answer for yourself if you take a look at those logistics and kind of sit back and say, okay, is this right for me?
Okay. And so since you said, do you have something that people can download to get that information or no?
Oh, absolutely. So I do offer what I call my free virtual summit set. It is an ebook plus a 2-page planning worksheet and a checklist, which you can grab for free at virtualsummitschool.com.
Okay. Now, and let me back up, because I'm guessing a lot of the listeners are maybe interested in a virtual summit, but they're probably going to be more interested in information you have about infopreneurship. So do you have something that you would direct those listeners to that you think they might enjoy?
I do. I have an ebook all about my 6-step process and a few other resources as well that go together in my free Infopreneur toolkit. You can just grab that at the homepage of my website at BaileyRichert.com.
Yeah, and that address will be in the show notes, everybody, so you can find that. Bailey, it's been a pleasure. I've learned a lot, and I'm going to continue to keep learning about these subjects. So I wanted to thank you for coming on the show. But I guess what I'd ask you is one last piece of advice. If you could give online entrepreneurs just one piece of advice, what would it be?
Start a business 3 years before you need the money. I have so many people that come to me and they seem to be in such a rush. And, I often get asked by potential VIP clients where we're having a strategy call deciding if we're going to work together, how many weeks or days after I start working with you will I start earning? And you're really coming into it with an incorrect mindset. Of course, we all want to make money with our businesses. That is one of the ultimate goals, and that's necessary in order for our businesses to be sustainable. But the truth is, and I don't want to lead anybody to believe that you are going to be able to set up your website, start writing on your blog, turn around, and in 1 month be able to replace your full-time 9-to-5 job income. It does take a while to build up, the assets, your revenue streams, as well as your platform, your content, your brand. There's a lot that really goes into it. And so the reason I say this is not just to give you realistic expectations, but also encourage you to get started. Even if you're already working at your 9-to-5 right now, there's so many things that you can do on the side in order to begin. And I recommend, doing those things now so that when you are at the point where you're earning enough money and you want to leave that job, you can do so down the road.
I think that's a great piece of advice because I know I will often be in a Facebook group with entrepreneurs, and it seems like a lot of people want immediate results, and I definitely know that doesn't happen. So I think that's a great piece of advice, listeners. You need to start building now and planting seeds today, for a tree that's going to bear fruit years from now. So
yes.
I think Bailey, that is a great piece of advice. Want to thank you for being on the show. Other than the links that you've given so far, what's the best way for listeners to get in touch with you or follow you or find your information?
Sure. Well, again, at my website, BaileyRichert.com, there is a contact form, or you can always email me at contact@BaileyRichert.com. Those emails come straight to me and I read and answer all of them. But there's going to be links to everything, including my Infopreneur Summit, as well as my blog, YouTube, all that stuff on my site. Another way that you can engage with me directly and a community of infopreneurs on Facebook is the Infopreneur Community Facebook group. You can just search for Infopreneur Community and you'll easily find it. Those would really be the best resources.
Okay, great. I would encourage the listeners to do that, to reach out, to find your community, because I think it'll be a great help to them. And Bailey, again, I want to thank you for being on the show. It's been great. So listeners, if you'll stick around, that's it with Bailey, but I will have a quick legal lesson for you after the break where you will get some information about what you need to be thinking from a legal perspective when it comes to a virtual summit.
And now for today's legal lesson.
Yay! Hey, everybody. That was a great interview with Bailey. I am excited that I had her on, and it was a lot of fun to talk about a couple of subjects that were very informative for me and I think are very valuable for you, including the concept of being an infopreneur, and more specifically about using virtual summits as a way to build your following, to build your platform, and ultimately to make some money. And in today's legal lesson, I'm going to pick up on an issue or a couple of issues you need to think about with respect to a virtual summit. Really, what I'm going to be talking about, though, is a concept that applies more broadly, but that has specific application in the context of virtual summits. And the basic legal concept that I want you to get is that you need to get all of your important legal or all of your important agreements in writing. And what does that mean in the context of a virtual summit? Well, here I'm going to focus on a particular kind of agreement that you're going to need if you ever run a virtual summit. And that is an agreement with your participants, with the speakers. And then second, we're going to deal with an agreement with the people who attend. So there's two agreements here that we need to talk about. But let's focus first on the agreement that you would need to have with your speakers. You might ask, why do I need to have an agreement with a speaker? Well, there's a couple of reasons. But before we get to the legal issues, let's back up and talk about some general benefits of having written agreements. Some of the biggest benefits of having written agreements aren't truly legal. There are legal parts to it, but a lot of the benefit actually comes in the fact that getting an agreement in writing forces you and the other party to make sure you're on the same page about the fundamental aspects of what you've agreed to. So let's think about that in the context of speakers at a virtual summit. Well, there's a lot of things that you have to figure out with your speakers. One might be, are you going to share people who sign up? In other words, are you going to share the email addresses or not? Some summits will allow for sharing of certain information versus of people who sign up, not just with the person who hosts the summit, but also with some or all of the speakers. You need to lay that out in agreement. But also, as Bailey discussed during the interview, the common way that speakers are, in a sense, compensated for appearing at these summits is that they are able to be affiliates. And if you're able to be an affiliate, that means you're able to submit or send people to a special link. And then if they ultimately sign up and pay some money, you'll get a piece of that back. So that's something you have to think about. And you have to lay out the terms of that agreement. What are the percentages? Is there a time period, et cetera? Does it apply to everything, or does it only apply to certain products they sign up for? And let me give you an example. So in Bailey's context, what if I were to send someone to the summit? The person signs up for, I think it's called the advanced sessions, which you have to pay to get those. Well, almost every affiliate agreement is going to say that I would get part of that. But what if that same person later signs up for some other product that Bailey has, a course or something else? Well, we need to work out the details of, do I get a piece of that or not? Those are the kinds of things you need to work out in doing a summit, and you need to work those out in a written agreement with your speakers so there's no dispute, no question, no fight later. That's the kind of thing you need to be thinking about and that you need to get in writing in these agreements. Similarly, some places, some virtual summits will have a situation where the advanced sessions, if you will, the paid sessions don't just come with the actual summit, but also courses or paid elements that some of the speakers offer. Again, in that context, are those speakers going to get a piece regardless of the affiliate status? And if so, you need to work out all those details. Other agreement that I mentioned you need is an agreement with the attendees. And the reason you need that, especially if money is going to change hands, you need to have a written agreement. And you might be saying, but wait, I can't get a written agreement. I can't force people to sign it. Look, I'm not going to tell you to send them a piece of paper that they're going to sign and scan. No. You do it through your terms of use. On your website for the summit, when they sign up, you should have a click box that they have to check to say they're accepting your terms of use and your privacy policy. And you need to have that in place and have that laid out so that you have an agreement with them. And let me talk about a couple of things you would need to have in there. Well, if you have a money back guarantee, that needs to be in your terms of use. That would be the kind of thing you would definitely need to include. But another issue you need to think about in terms of user agreement is the privacy policy. If, as a part of your summit, you will share their email information or any other aspect of their private information with any of the speakers, you need to tell them that in the privacy policy, because that wouldn't be something you expect. So, for example, let's use Bailey's Infopreneur Summit as an example again. Let's say I send someone to that summit to sign up, and they do. Well, that person would probably expect that, hey, Bailey, who is running the summit, is going to get their information. But at her summit, she tends to have 45 people or maybe more speaking. And again, I don't think Bailey does this, but let's say she did share information with certain of the other speakers. Someone who I sent there wouldn't necessarily think that their personal information is going to be shared with other people. And if you're going to do that, you need to set it out in your privacy policy so that people have a chance to understand what will happen to their personal information. So that's the kind of information you need in the terms of use in your privacy policy. There's a lot of other things depending on how you're structuring the summit, what's going to happen, and all of those issues. You need to set that out in your terms of use and privacy policy. But those are kind of the big highlight points. And I'm not going to belabor you with boring you on exactly what needs to go in there. The point is simply to understand that you need to be thinking about those things and make sure they're in place. So the key lesson, the key takeaway from this legal lesson is the general concept of get your important agreements in writing. And in the context of a summit, that is going to mean you're going to need agreements with your speakers and agreements with your attendees. If you get those in place and use common sense terms, you will be ahead of the game. And again, you can find those types of agreements. I could help you with them, but you can find them generally, and just make sure you have something that sets out what the terms are. Don't let concern about legalese or having to spend money on an attorney stop you from doing it. If nothing else, just set out the core terms in common sense language and go from there. That's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you haven't yet subscribed and give the podcast a rating and review, I would really appreciate it. That's very helpful in making sure that other people will find the podcast and can get this information. So that's my first call to action is if you got it on iTunes, go to iTunes and give it a rating or review. If you did it some other source, Stitcher, Google Play, do the same there. Now, beyond that, you may have noticed at kind of the outro, there's a reference to a cheat sheet that you can get. This is a cheat sheet that addresses the 4 biggest mistakes that I see online entrepreneurs make over and over again and what you need to do instead. So I would suggest that you go and get a copy of that. You can get that at mistakes.youronlinegenius.com. So those are the calls to action for today. Look forward to next week where we've got another great episode, but that's it for now. So this is Bobby Klink signing off.
Thanks for listening. And remember to visit mistakes.youronlinegenius.com to get your essential guide to the 4 legal mistakes that can doom your business and how to avoid them. Join us next week for another episode to expand your online genius and your success.